Hi, I'm Aaron Tomlinson, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I wanted to jump on here and just talk about something that I've been thinking about for a while that I think is really important, and maybe we don't think about it or talk about it enough, and that is your sense of self-esteem. Now, I didn't really plan or prepare notes for this or anything like that. So this is going to be me just sharing very much free-flowing thought as I've been thinking about this for a little bit of time. If you haven't noticed, life can be very, very complicated. And there are many forces that interact with our lives. One of the interesting things about ourselves as human beings is that we have the ability to self-reflect. And in that ability to self-reflect, we have the ability to hold a self-concept or to think about ourselves or to have ways that we feel about ourselves or a self-image, ways that we see ourselves. And so there's lots of terms to describe this. We talk about self-image, self-concept, but I really want to focus on the word self-esteem. The word esteem comes from the Latin, and it's where we get the word estimate. So if we were going to refinance our home, which hopefully we won't have to do that anytime soon because interest rates are out of control. But if we were going to do that, or if we were going to buy a piece of property or something, then you would have someone come in and give you an estimate. And that estimate would tell you how much equity you have in your home, or basically what your home is worth. So when we're talking about self-esteem, we're talking specifically about how much value and honor and worth we hold within ourselves and carry within ourselves. Now, while having a self-concept or self-image or even self-esteem sounds pretty simple, and we talk about it like it's one thing, it's actually a very complex process because as human beings, we are very complex. Our psychology is very complex, our personality, our consciousness, our minds, our emotions, our lives can be very complex. And that's what I was saying earlier. There are so many forces that interact with us. There are a lot of forces outside of us that we cannot control. We can't control things like interest rates or the economy. We can't control other people and how they're going to behave towards us or what they're going to say about us or how they're going to think about us or what opinion they hold of us. And all those things affect and impact us. And then we have forces within. We have a lot of stuff going on inside of us, and a lot of it is happening at a level that we're not really conscious of. I love this quote from Carl Jung. He said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. Or in my case, I would call it the will of God or the leadership of the Holy Spirit. This was the will of God, this wasn't the will of God, etc., and so on. But there's probably no force that influences our lives more than this issue of self-esteem, how we value ourselves, how we estimate ourselves. And our self-esteem, I'm going to talk a little bit about how self-esteem comes about, or lack of self-esteem comes about, or self-worth comes about, or lack of self-worth, or self-hatred and self-loathing, and all the stuff that we can battle with and struggle with. Now, remember, it's a complex process because we don't just have one self. We have many selves. There are many roles that we play. There are many personas that we put on. There are many selves that are interacting inside of us consciously and subconsciously that then produce a lot of our thoughts and our behaviors and our opinions and our beliefs about not just ourselves, but about reality, about life, about other people, about how these things impact and influence our lives. But our sense of self, or our sense of selves, and our self-esteem that we have with our sense of selves can be something that we can work on. And it can be something that when we do work on it and we do raise our sense of self-esteem, we do raise our sense of self-value and self-worth, it can have an impact in every single area of our lives. Because every experience that we have, every interaction that we have with others in a relationship, good or bad, every situation that we have on the job, every situation that we might even be facing with our physical health and things like that, our self comes with us, or ourselves come with us. And with that, then this sort of general sense of, do we honor ourselves? Do we hold ourselves in high esteem? or not. Now, there is nothing wrong with holding yourself in high esteem. In fact, people with high esteem are usually less likely to be braggarts. They're less likely to be name droppers. They're less likely to use people to get their own conscious or unconscious needs met. They're less likely to be sociopathic or psychopathic or narcissistic because they're not depending on things outside of them for their sense of value or their sense of self-worth. Now, this is tricky because our internal map of our worth and our value, our internal self-concept, particularly as it relates to self-esteem, is something that is given to us by others, and it's made up of our core beliefs, which were formed in us at a really young age, very early on in childhood. So you can think about it this way. I have the ability to self-reflect. I have the ability to think and feel about myself. And as I'm developing this map, this internal map of who I am, it's being developed through my interactions with other people, through my social interactions. And my self-esteem then is given to me by how much honor or worth I feel like other people attach to me, especially early on, or how much other people devalue me or shame me. So your self-esteem, what I'm trying to say is your self-esteem is a byproduct of your social interactions, especially those early social interactions. And so if you got a lot of honor in the group, if you felt like you had worth and value, that you brought worth and value to a group, then you're going to internalize that as self-esteem or as a high sense of self-worth. On the other hand, if you are shamed a lot, if you're shamed a lot in the home as a child, or you're shamed in school, bullied, made fun of early on, those are very highly emotional events, and they impact our core beliefs at a not just a mental level or the level of self-consciousness, but also very much at a feeling level and also very much at an emotional level. And there's probably nothing as debilitating as a sense of shame, an overall shame-based reality or shame-based identity. Now, remember, this is something that's given to us based on early interactions, and there's lots of ways that we can feel ashamed. And there are times probably that, feeling guilty about something, or if we transgress our internal value system, or we transgress the ethical value system, in other words, the rules at home, the rules at school, we don't understand social interactions or social contracts. Some people are more gifted at being able to identify social contracts and know how to work those, and other people just aren't very good at that. People that are on the autism spectrum or are neurodivergent and not neurotypical, meaning that their brains operate very, very differently than people who are neurotypical. In other words, it's on the fringes. Their brain operates on the fringes of the way everybody else's operates. And so they can have real extreme difficulty figuring out social interactions. For example, for some people on the autism spectrum, they will not understand sarcasm at all. And they don't necessarily understand, friendly teasing or joking, because their brains work in a way that they really interpret most things, if not everything, depending on where you are on that spectrum, from a literal level. I remember my son going to a baby shower when he was really young, 3-4 years old, going to his first baby shower. And he was so disappointed because it wasn't raining babies. He expected to go there with all the wonder of a small child and see babies falling down from the sky. Now, he had to learn sarcasm, right? So we have a tendency when we're younger to interpret things on a literal level and not learn these nuances. And there are some people who are able and better at learning these nuances than others. And so we can find ourselves in a lot of situations early on that produce a high level of a sense of guilt, of a sense of shame, of a sense of being bad or a sense of being wrong. And that affects our overall sense of self-worth. Self-esteem really is a feeling more than it is something that we do with our minds. It's something that operates at a heart level. And through these experiences, we do begin to build some core beliefs. Now, belief is not just a thought. You don't believe everything that you think. A belief, psychologically, from a psychological perspective, is a thought invested with emotion. And the higher the level of emotion with the information that's coming in will create a stronger belief inside of you. So your feelings aren't always accurate to what's actually happening or what's actually real. Your feelings are a map, and the map is not the territory. And sometimes the map accurately represents and reflects the territory, and sometimes the map does not reflect the territory very well at all. But your emotions, your feelings, really do show you and reveal for you what you actually believe, because beliefs are thoughts invested with emotions. And so that's why sometimes when core beliefs get assaulted, or someone else strongly and vehemently disagrees with you in your core beliefs, especially if it touches on who you are as a person, especially if it touches upon somehow your sense of self, if your sense of self is invested totally in your worldview, then when someone challenges your worldview, it's going to feel like an attack on you. Now, I'm not talking about somebody who comes into your space and for whatever reason feels like they're authorized by God to tell you some flaw or fault that you have in your blind spot that you don't see, and puts that information out there to try to attack you and really to try to erode your sense of self-esteem. That's something different. I'm talking about if somebody just challenges a belief that you have. So, for example, when I was a Christian, my whole sense of self was wrapped up in being a Christian. My whole worldview was wrapped up in being a Christian. So Christianity and the Bible not only gave me a worldview, but it gave me an understanding and deeply held emotional meanings about who I was, what it meant to be me in light of that worldview, right? So this is why when we talk about these religious topics, or we talk about deconstruction, or we talk about things that are not personal, they can become personal very quickly, because our sense of self and our sense of self-worth is intricately tied to our worldview. And this is where self-esteem comes in. Because if we can develop and if we can build more empowering beliefs about ourselves that are invested with emotions, that are invested with feelings, then we can tolerate, we'll have a higher level of tolerance for differences. We'll have a higher level of tolerance for people who think differently than we do, or who are at different stages or places in life than we are. And this goes for people that may be ahead of us in something as well. We may be trying to apply ourselves to something and learn a new skill, and we see somebody who's doing it better than we're doing it. We're seeing people who maybe are making more money, or their families seem to be happier than ours, or their relationships seem to be better, or they've got more friends, or whatever the case may be. Then we can compare ourselves. Now, a person with a high internal sense of self-worth, when they compare themselves, they don't allow someone else's success to negatively impact them any more than they would let someone else's failure or someone else's worldview negatively impact them. In other words, if you have a strong internal sense of self-worth, you can celebrate someone else and their accomplishments. It's virtually impossible to celebrate diversity, to celebrate differences, to celebrate other people, to interact in a healthy and meaningful and empowering and loving way with other people if you don't deeply love yourself. Now, that's something that I hear talked about a lot too in, psychological and spiritual circles, which is what I run in, that we need to learn to love ourselves. And this was something when I was presented with an experience that started to allow me to deconstruct from a lot of my beliefs and values and live more authentically, live more. And when I say live authentically, what I mean is to live more from the inside out than from the outside in, to be guided by an internal guidance system rather than all the noise and all the stuff that's going on outside, right? But that can leave a person in a place that it's really ambiguous. How do I learn to love myself? Well, you can start by examining your self-esteem. And just like anything in life, you're not going to be able to progress unless you really are able to tell yourself the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about yourself in an area of your life. And that doesn't mean that we resist truth that's negative. In fact, people that have a very low sense of self-esteem, that have a very negative self-image or self-concept, they very often will resist positive things about themselves. They'll resist positive information. They'll resist affirmation. They'll resist safety when safety is present. They'll resist love when love is present. And if those beliefs are strong enough at an unconscious level now, remember, if unconsciously or subconsciously your sense of self-esteem is very low, you can be in the presence of people who love you. You can be in the presence of people who celebrate you. They may not agree with you, but they still celebrate who you are as a person, and they hold affection for you in their hearts. And you will misinterpret that. Not only will you misinterpret that as a threat, you will misperceive them as a villain. This is very, very documented in psychological studies and research. You will vilify them and even alienate them because they're actually giving you something that contradicts your core belief. And our core belief is where we find, our core beliefs are where we find our sense of stability, especially about ourselves. So if you believe very negative things about yourself, if you feel very negative things about yourself, and someone tries to offer you positive stuff like love, positive stuff like safety, positive stuff like affection, positive stuff like feedback that could possibly help you, you will alienate and vilify that person because unconsciously you have to prove to yourself that you're not worthy of that stuff, because that's how strongly you believe these things about yourself. See, our self-beliefs, our self-concept, our sense of self-worth and self-esteem are like glasses that we wear that colors the world. And this is why I said, if we can improve this, if we can raise this, we can really change all of our experiences in our life. If you find yourself having difficulty with people, having difficulty with relationships, having difficulty with money, having even physical difficulties or difficulties getting ahead in things, by simply raising your sense of self-esteem, by simply working on your self-concept, it's like taking off a pair of colored glasses and putting on a different pair of colored glasses, and automatically all those areas of your life are going to start to improve. All those interactions are going to start to improve. Now, one of the things that we do when we have a low sense of self-worth or low self-esteem is we stabilize our sense of self, or we emotionally regulate by using the people in our lives. And this is where even social media can come in, and it can be very toxic, because we can use, how many views did I get on YouTube? But use myself for an example. How many views did I get on YouTube? How many subscribers do I have? How many likes or comments did I get on that picture that I put up? Or how many likes and loves and comments and shares did I get about an article that I put out, or thoughts that I put out there? And if that contributes to my sense of self-esteem, then I'm going to need that to prop myself up. By the same token, if I don't get that, then my self-esteem is going to go back down. Same thing with interpersonal interactions in real life, IRLs, right? In real life people. If people give me enough praise, if I get enough praise on the job, if I get enough affirmation from my spouse or my significant other or my partner or partners, whatever the case may be for you, if I get enough validation, if I get enough praise, then I feel good about myself, and not realizing that my sense of self never individuated from the group context. It never took on a life of its own. See, we get our sense of self-esteem early on from how much praise we receive versus how much shame that we receive. If our shameful experiences are more powerful for us emotionally, or they're more repetitive for us, they happen more frequently in our lives, then the praise experiences or the experiences of honor that we have with other people, and most of us are a mixed bag, right? All of us have had experiences that were positive, and all of us have had interactions with others that were negative and harmful. And so early on, you're drawing, that is the source of your self-esteem. But what we want to have happen is we want a sense of self-esteem to crystallize, hopefully a high sense of self-esteem, to crystallize inwardly so that it is stabilized inside of us enough that we are not propping ourselves up by bragging. We're not propping ourselves up by name dropping. We're not propping ourselves up by trying to sound smarter than everybody else in the room. We're not propping ourselves up by putting other people down. We're not propping ourselves up by gossiping about other people that may be doing better than we are. And it frees us from that stuff. That doesn't mean that when you have negative interactions with people that you're going to feel great. It just means that you're not dependent upon fixing those negative interactions, or you're not dependent upon receiving positive interactions for your overall sense of self-worth and sense of self-esteem. It's stabilized. Now, for a lot of people, they are never able to make that developmental step. And so they live their entire lives dependent on outside forces to tell them who they are, dependent upon outside voices to tell them who they are. And they can become really, really rattled when the world and the people in their life don't cooperate. And so they start trying to control people, or they start alienating people, or they have to disconnect from people, or whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all. In fact, the outside in approach, this isn't like just an inside out approach versus an outside in approach, because if we are constantly and consistently around people who are critical, if we are constantly and consistently around people that don't celebrate us or don't appreciate us or don't show us honor, don't give us safety or make us feel loved, then it's going to be impossible for you to have a healthy sense of self-esteem. And so making changes in your life where you remove yourself in whatever way is right for you from those people or those situations, then that doesn't mean you necessarily have to kick them out of your life. You may just have to dial down their voice in your life. In other words, not put as much dependence upon that voice for your own sense of self-worth. And there are a myriad of choices that can be made there. And guess what? Nobody gets to tell you which choice is right for you or which choice is wrong for you. This is very much an inside job. This is very much internal work that you have to do if you want to raise your sense of self-esteem. So coming back to what I said, telling yourself the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth does not mean always that you are admitting your flaws, admitting to your flaws, being truthful about it. And if somehow I admit to my flaw, that truth will set me free. Really, to be honest with you, people with low sense of self-worth or self-esteem very often can't admit to their flaws, and they're very often unteachable because their low sense of self-worth, if they were to admit to a flaw, it would just be devastating to their sense of self. So when I'm saying tell yourself the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sometimes telling yourself the truth is realizing that you're not as bad as you think you are. Sometimes it's believing the person who's giving you the compliment. Sometimes it's receiving the affirmation and the honor that you're getting from people around you and in your life and in your inner circle. Like I said, people with very low sense of self-esteem, they'll resist that. They'll push back against that. They won't be able to hear that. which is why it's an inside job. So you got to tell yourself the truth. You got to be willing to tell yourself the truth. You got to be willing to open up and say, maybe all this stuff that I believe about myself, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, maybe it's just a map. Maybe it's not the territory. Maybe it's not reality. And then if you can realize that this is entirely an inside job, then you can begin to refashion that. You can begin to remake that. You can begin to use creativity to look at your beliefs, your core beliefs. And remember, your feelings reveal to you your core beliefs. So you can start to ask yourself, if you can recognize, my self-esteem isn't where I want it to be. I don't have a high sense of self-esteem. Even this conversation, if you've made it this far through the video, is making me uncomfortable. So you realize you want to do some work there, then you have to be honest with yourself at a feeling level about the shame that you feel about yourself, about the negativity that you feel about yourself, about the loathing or self-hatred that you feel about yourself, or maybe it's just self-doubt and insecurity. But you got to be really honest about that. And then you've got to ask yourself the question, how has this served me in my life? How has this way of feeling and thinking about myself, how has it affected my life? Does it serve me? Has it served any positive purpose? And first you want to look for secondary benefits. Are there any secondary benefits that I'm getting from playing small? Are there any secondary benefits that I'm getting by being open to every criticism that comes my way, and yet somehow closed or shut off to affirmation and praise when it comes my way? It could serve you by allowing you to avoid responsibility. I don't have to have responsibility for myself. The problem's not me. The problem's everybody else. I can blame everybody else for my circumstances and my situation. I don't have to take responsibility to adult in life because, you know, adulting is not always easy. I don't have to take risks. I don't have to face fears of failure and things like that. Those could be some secondary benefits. And then you want to look at, but has it really served me? Has it given me and produced for me the kind of life that I want? Or have I settled for less? Have I settled for the scraps? Have I settled for the breadcrumbs from the master's table, so to speak? Have I settled for less while inside I want more? I've settled for less, but inside I need more. I've settled for less, but inside there's something growing inside of me that says, I think I might deserve more. And then you can begin to see, you know, how it's served you and maybe some of the secondary benefits that you've taken from these negative beliefs and feelings, and how it hasn't served you, how it's been destructive to you, how it's prevented you from having the relationships that you want, how it's prevented you from having, even in some cases, it's impacted your physical health. You're stressed out all the time, so your stomach is messed up, or your blood pressure's high, or you're tired all the time, or whatever the case may be. A lot of this stuff can be unconscious stuff, again, that guides our lives. But if we're not internally oriented and very strongly internally oriented in a healthy and balanced way, then we will blame shift and we will project and we'll do all kinds of stuff and really become a damaging person to other people in our lives. And I know none of us want to do that. And I'm talking about consistently being damaging to people in your life. So figuring out, does it serve me? Doesn't it serve me? And then asking yourself, what would serve me better? What would serve me better? Would it serve me better if I felt better about myself? If I'm dealing with the feeling? Would it serve me better if I thought differently about myself, if I'm dealing with the thought aspect? And remember, a belief is a thought invested with emotion. It's the two becoming one. That forms our beliefs, and our beliefs form our filters and the way we express and interact with people and situations in our lives. So in order to break down a belief or change a belief, we have to deal with both the thought, what's the negative thought, and then what's the feeling that goes with this thought? Or if you're more feeling oriented, what's the feeling? And if this feeling had a voice, what would it be saying to me right now? And then we examine that again as a map, not as reality. This is not real. The only place it exists is in you. The only life it has is the life that you're giving it. The only children that it's having are the ones that you're reproducing with your mind-body connection and the conjoining of your thoughts and your feelings into a belief about yourself that raises or lowers your self-esteem. So then this is where imagination comes in. This is where creativity comes in. And you can begin to refashion and reshape yourself and say, what if I thought this way? Take that negative belief and turn it around. Think something positive. What if I thought this way about myself? What feeling might that invoke? Or if I felt this way, what thought would that invoke? And you can try on those thoughts and feelings and states. And then when you find one that really fits for you, you find one that you really like, you habitually practice that until it becomes second nature to you. This is not new thought. This is not positive thinking, the power of positive thinking. This is none of that stuff. This is as simple as learning. You learned your self-concept. Your self-esteem is the byproduct of the beliefs or the learnings that you had about yourself. And you learned it so well that it's operating at an unconscious and subconscious level, or what we might call the level of programming. So all we're talking about is learning a new belief, and learning requires repetition. So you can think about it that way. I'm just learning a new skill. Self-esteem is a skill. The ability to manage your self-esteem is a skill. I'm learning a new sense of self. So how do I want to think about myself? How do I want to feel about myself? How do I want to present myself? And in this way, you can refashion yourself, and it becomes an inside job, and it can become a lot of fun, and it can become very empowering for you, and it can become very helpful for you, and it can really enrich your life. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you. I hope you learned something from it. Please, if you like my content, if you've come this far in the video, you like my content, please hit subscribe, hit the like buttons, comment, share. And also, if you're on Facebook, I have a Facebook group that's a private Facebook group called the New Day Global Community. And we have a lot of fun on there. There's just some wonderful, beautiful people on there. And if you'd like to join that group, the link to it is in my bio. I'm going to be putting out more content in the next year. We're getting close to New Year's. I've got some plans to put out some more content that will give you the how-tos of self-esteem, the how-tos of the supernatural and spirituality, the how-tos of energy work and things like that. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for giving me space in your life with this video. I really, really appreciate you. And I will be with, if you want to watch Sunday Morning Live, it's at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, noon Eastern Time. On Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. I'm live on here and in the Facebook group. Otherwise, I hope you're blessed. I hope you're safe. And I hope that you're well. And thank you very much again for watching this video.